This is Christian Baxter, and you're listening to Yours Truly, a place we go to think out loud. What's up? What's up? What's up? Hive Mind. Welcome to Yours Truly Live. Audio check. Audio check. Are we live? What's up, Slack? Are we live? Can y'all hear? Can y'all hear? Give me a thumbs up. Give me a whatever's you're supposed to show. Thank you, Slack. So, yes, thumbnail. 3-hour conversations change the world. This is thinking out loud about, what's been going on, and big week in the world. Lots of, I see you. Oh, no, it's not it. I see you, Anselman. Obviously, presidential election, intense, culture, intense atmosphere. If your team, your political party lost, upsetting. How am I going to remember? Are you going to remember us? Well, somebody put out some memberships in the last stream, a Grim, and I think it was Peter Penrose Bach put out some memberships on the last stream. So, what was I thinking? So, thinking out loud about this week, the thing that struck me so much, and the title, I'm not going to save it till the end like Grim does. The title of on my thumb, 3-hour conversations change the world. We're going to do some presentation here, and we can find it. Got to click the right one. I don't see it on here. Oh, here it is. Okay. Sharing the screen. So this was one of my very first YouTube videos that I put out called The IDW, a retrospective how 3-hour conversations change the world. Sorry, I'm gonna take a drink of water here. From my daughter's cup. It's a good day for a great day. I don't know. We're gonna play a little bit of this. We'll play a little bit. Watching the intellectual dark web play out had a pretty big impact on me. I kind of want to unpack the reasons why. There's the big names. I think that it's spread out. People have opinions about it, but for me, it's like Joe Rogan, the Weinsteins, Sam Harris, Ben Shapiro, Tim Pool, and Dave Rubin. And not that I think today you look at these people individually, 6-7 years ago, their careers were in different places, their positions and different lines have been drawn in the sand now. But if we can go back, 7-8 years, they were all in different places and coming together to create this so named dark web of the internet. So I was very much into that dark web. And I want to talk about what some of the powerful moments that stood out to me during that time. So I'm talking slow in those early videos because I was having to process a lot. And it was trying to put all these pieces together. But I think what we see now, the intellectual dark web died, right? Like it's not a thing anymore. But what I kind of think that the election is kind of a referendum on, I don't know if I'm using that word right, but it's what took place 8 years ago with that, what took place a decade ago at Gamergate. I think you can all tie that to this election in so many ways. Yeah, I don't think it did die. I think that this is all part of what we're seeing play out. And I wanted to just give some different perspectives on the, let's see. I'm trying to do this better. Sharing screen. let's see next. Let's just hear. I want to hear from Kale. Kale and I were kind of vibing on Twitter yesterday or the day before about how significant it appeared to us that podcasts played a role in this presidential election. Whether you're happy about it or not, I think it's one of the most profound parts of this election cycle, and culturally, like a huge shift. Using the words like legacy media versus new alternative media, those types of things. But let's listen to Kale kind of share a little bit on his perspective about it.
This sort of brings up the podcast part of this conversation that I know that I really would love to talk to you about it, but here we are, and I'm going to do it. If you've got a few more minutes, I'd like to do it.
I got all night. It's already past my dinner time, so I'm just gonna. That's so okay. So I'm here for
green light.
That's right. Yeah.
So when you do like what we're doing right now, okay. So we've been going on. Oh my gosh, we've been going for 2 hours and 4 minutes and 19 seconds and counting. Okay, so we've been going for a while now.
Yeah. I hope people are still listening.
Yeah, no, I've got 190 people on here. This is great.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah. So, yeah, right. I appreciate everybody. What is striking to me is that, we've been doing this now for 2 hours. And if somebody's watching at home, like, I think they have a pretty good sense of like who you and I are. I just do.
Yeah, I hope
because
so.
You're talking and you're sort of speculating out loud and you're sort of reacting to each other. Like there's nowhere to hide with this, right? I don't even have any fancy branding and songs and music to sort of distract people. Like this is just like straight up you and I doing our thing back and forth. Only real, and it sounds so arrogant, but I'm going to say it. Only real people can do this, okay? People who are fabricated in a lab for sound bites and looks at a podium and clips here and there, they simply cannot do this if that's what they were made for. And so go like watch JD Vance talk to Theo Vaughn. It's like he's just a real person.
Yeah.
And I would say this, not about
he's just a real person. That I think that's part of this thing that we've been seeing play out with this medium. The medium is the message. We say that a lot around these here parts, these here corners of the internet, that the medium is the message. So what is the medium? It's long form conversations. And who has really pioneered this on the thumbnail? What is it? Thumbnail accountability, Grim. What do we call it? I can't remember. Am I fixing the title yet? What title did I get wrong, Grim? You see Gen X on the chart, 45 to 65-year-olds, males, I think, were 53% on Trump. And who else is in the thumbnails? Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, both Gen Xers. And there's so much that could be said about them individually, but I just want to kind of stop there. And agency, there is no agency. Is it that I have agency spelled wrong? That may be what it is. But that's kind of where I'm going with this, is that the agents, podcasting is agency. It's a type of personal agency. And I think that's what we see here in this little corner of the internet. It's a fractal of that agency. To listen to Joe Rogan for 5, 7, 8 years, and I had this conversation with Pete from Strange Theology early on. It's like, I want to be a part of those conversations. And so now we are, I mean, there's so much to be said here. Let's see. Leave that down here. We're going to go ahead and we'll pull up the old Twitter. Here we go. So what is the vibe? What I don't even know who I was responding to here. Let's see, pull this up here. And we're there. It's alive. Remember. Oh, I spelled remember wrong. Not my strongest suit. Coming from the medical transcriptionist. Let's see what I was responding to here. Something a little cheeky. I don't know. Let's see. Well, hold on here. Gotta fix it. Well, yeah, so a personal agency, we're gonna take a look at this. I think that so the GIF that I had pulled up there from Office Space, you have the boss talking about the TPS reports or whatever, and we'll get there. We'll get there again. Say that. Yeah. So, and then I made this little image down here. Gen X. Yeah, we sort of got a problem here. Yeah, you apparently didn't put one of the new cover sheets on your TPS report, and because the government feels like this. And you imagine the main character from Office Space, and that whole kind of premise is that he doesn't have any real agency as a worker there, no control. And it's so interesting that this kind of took me to one of the other great Gen X movies of history is Fight Club. And this subtle form of communication about just conversation was like this massive shift into personal agency. And it's like, well, can't talk here. It's like, well, we could talk here. And we can even connect that back to the whole Gamergate stuff. But it's like, yeah, we're going to need you to fix that, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I just see that there is no agency. There was no agency, and that thinking out loud on the internet and even within like TLC is a huge form of personal agency. Let's look at some other thoughts on podcasts winning the election. We'll get there. We're going to listen to some clips. Yeah, let's look at this one. Well, this will be my 2 cents if you didn't already see this. All right, here we go.
She didn't seem like a real person because she couldn't talk for an extended period of time.
I think 3-hour podcast conversations have changed the world. And it's going to be very interesting looking back on this point tonight with what, I mean, Joe Rogan did it. He was the last one. So he did Vance, Trump, and Musk in this last week. But the other kind of podcast bro circuit of Flagrant and I don't know who the other guys. Theo Vaughn, and even who's the dude, the big gay dude with the glasses a lot of time, Tim Dillon. He had on pants, and you're listening to these guys talk for an hour and a half, 3 hours. And that totally, I think, is a huge deal.
Yes.
And if you look at, and we could get into partisan stuff. I'm just going to focus on those things. I'm not going to make the counter argument that can be made for itself. But you can listen to these people for 3 hours. And if I just think that is incredible. And I know that certain forms of media are trying to change that or shut it down. And I just think that I'm on here talking out loud as a result of people talking out loud and having 3-hour conversations. Like that is a huge reason I think that we are doing this and feel like we can. We've seen it modeled now for 8 years and it's moved now to the mainstream.
We've actually been hearing a lot of talk about the Rogan podcast, Joe Rogan podcast. In fact, a little while ago, we were talking to two guys. One of them said that he was on the fence until he said when Kamala did not go on the Joe Rogan podcast, that was what influenced his vote. He ended up voting for Trump, but he said that he was open to listening to Kamala on the podcast. And when she didn't, again, not necessarily all the issues, but the fact that he said she didn't seem like a real person because she couldn't talk for an extended period of time. She didn't seem like a real person because she couldn't talk for an extended period of time. She didn't seem like a real person because she couldn't talk for an extended period of time. So
Yeah, so I had a little fun with that one.
This is Christian back.
So yeah, I didn't I had a little fun with the end of that, but you can see my point. And yeah, Chad's asking if this is a stream. I don't know what he's calling it. Is this a link stream? Sure. I've got a lot of links that I'm wanting to talk about. But yeah, this is there's so much this idea of agency, like someone going on and talking, just having a conversation, like represents so much agency. And even if someone presents different ideas or they don't agree, there was so much power in just sitting here and listening to these two guys talk. And sometimes they may talk about their kids, or sometimes they may talk about some trip they just took, or someone they met somewhere. But it's not this kind of, I met Sally out on the campaign trail, and the story of Sally is this, blah blah blah. And it just wasn't those things. And it was very new generation. It was a turning of the tide in how these candidates, and how not only that, but how we as a culture are in some ways in a war for this type of agency. And that's where I wanted to, let's look a little bit more on this, this information here. Pull this thing back up. Still struggling to be a good. Here we go.
Opportunity.
When you and I were speaking at one point earlier, you were talking about algorithms, all kinds of data that was available that you were, people were going to be presenting to the Harris campaign.
Sure.
And I suppose you're going to say did that fall on deaf ears to large part?
Yeah, Van's right. They were like, we've got it.
We've got it.
And they didn't have it. And one very obvious missed opportunity is that Joe Rogan is the biggest audience in the country. It's disaffected, low propensity men, kind of the audience that the Harris campaign should be trying to reach. It was much more upside than anything else. Kamala goes on, Tim Walz goes on, and then you have millions of men who are exposed to the Democratic message, and they turned it down because she was too busy. I mean, like it makes zero sense, except in the context that the team just didn't have confidence in her to do it, which would be its own issue.
Unless you think he's being mean. 48.
So, there's a point, and there's a lot that could be said about disaffected men not listening to the legacy media because they hate you. But other than that, she should be speaking to these people. It's all about, they should be speaking to the marginalized people. Well, like if you're going to play that game, there's always going to be somebody marginalized that's at, whether if they're the top of the status hierarchy, they're marginalized or whatever. But let's see. That was, we'll look at a few more thoughts here. This one was crazy. David Pakman, he one of the other points, let's see if I've got it on here. The other kind of podcast point that was made on the news. I thought I had it in here, but I guess I don't. There was a media commentator talking about how podcasts, there's this whole alternative wing of information and media that the conservatives have constructed in the wake of this, and the and the left wing doesn't have anything like that. And I just was like, no, it's because the news is there. Of course they don't really have anything like that, because the news is their operation, and pop culture is their operation. And so, the other side had to kind of squeeze out this other form of existence to create something kind of new that is changing the world significantly. And yeah, let's see. Here it is. I found it. All right, bringing it back on stage. And say that. Here we go.
Groups to
particularly the media ecosystem it's not a good one. It's a negative one. It's a radicalization funnel. But what they have done in their online media ecosystem is build a radicalization engine, literally the way militant groups do around the world, that takes people from relatively low level annoyances with the world. Why are eggs so expensive? Why is my kid learning this new thing in American history in school that I didn't learn? And then moves them through YouTube videos, through podcasts, moves them from that annoyance all the way slowly to a full-blown fascist politics. It's an elaborate multi-billion-dollar infrastructure, and there is nothing like it on the pro-democracy side. We don't have when a man is just lost and lonely and not yet radicalized, we don't have the equivalent of Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson to move that man in a feminist direction. By the way, we should educate men that it's actually really great to live with a strong woman who makes money. It's actually easier. Life is easier.
But I think
oh man, there's so much inside of that clip that it's it's almost laughable to listen to him say so many things in there. But yeah, low level. This was the first one, Mandy. Low level annoyances like my eggs are so expensive. Yeah, like, you know, oh, that's what's radicalizing people. It's the economy, and yeah. So what's the point of here? The point though is that it's like, oh, it's this huge, big organized thing, and blah blah blah. It's like just people with a YouTube channel. But what's interesting is there have been some YouTube, there have been other YouTube, let me see here. Pull this off for a second. There are some left-wing YouTubers that do the YouTube game. And, one of them is that does some crossover sometimes is David Pakman. And, let's see, he had a interesting video that he dropped today. We'll pull it back up here.
I woke up this morning. We had lost 5,000 YouTube subscribers compared to where we were last night. Now, the first thing I thought was, is this a glitch? We've been on YouTube for 15 years or something like that. And subscribers always just go up. They just never go down. They go up. Is something wrong with my channel? Is someone attacking my channel? What's going on? So I started texting. And I texted Brian Tyler Cohen. And I texted Tyler Cohen and Brian Cohen and Brian Tyler. All of them. I texted all of them. I texted Jesse Dollemore. I texted Luke Beasley and Farron Cousins and Sam Cedar. And every single one of our channels since last night is hemorrhaging subscribers. What is it that is going on? Here is a graphic. As you can see, subscribers just go up, 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 and they are down. It is not just YouTube subscribers. We are seeing record cancellations of paid memberships. Record cancellations. These are the people that keep the show running. Now, for a moment, I thought, if it's just YouTube, maybe YouTube is purging people who are inactive subscribers. And once a year, usually YouTube does this, and you see a little decline, and then numbers go back up. They're not doing it. They're not doing it. And if that were the case, we wouldn't be seeing paid membership cancellations on the website. So now I understand what is going on. It's terrifying, but it is happening. A lot of people are checking out. I heard anecdotally from a couple dozen people who said, you know, David, I just can't do it anymore. I just can't do it. I'm checking out. I'm out. And the reason that this is terrifying, not only because it puts everybody in left-wing media's livelihoods at stake and at risk, it terrifies me because our instinct is the opposite of what the right does. And we will get crushed if this is the way we respond.
And then he goes on to talk about getting better organized, which is funny because I seem to be like, everyone says, well, the other side's way better organized than we are, but I don't know. There is a great story about the the gay guy up in Pennsylvania who basically helped mobilize the Amish. Like, talk about that story. What is going on? And it's a referendum on trust and personal agency. And unfortunately, you know, we can all critique every extreme end of the politic, but we are closer on one right now. And that one is like, doesn't want people to have this kind of agency. And even just see it like by Kamala not going on Joe Rogan, like it just kind of baffles my mind that it's an example of not seeing someone as an agent having personal agency. Remember that in body, there is no agency. It's another way of maybe looking at that. I don't know exactly all the time what Grim means by that, but it's what came into my mind is we live that when we're looking at these two media structures, and even in my live, when I was talking to Matthew on our political coverage live, yours truly, was kind of these thoughts about how there's these new branches of independent media cropping up, and it's weird because he's like saying there's nobody on the they're like there's nobody on the left. It's like, well, I saw Tim Pool say, because there was a push to like kind of try to cancel some of these shows again, or New York Times like same old song and dance, and it said something like, where are the Democrat podcasts and such? And Tim Pool says, Tim Pool's name was listed in this article, and Tim was like, I was a Democrat. You did have a Democrat doing this. And I was kind of like, damn. And most of them, I mean, so is Joe Rogan. Like that's the issue. And you've kind of you're shrinking your well of influence and your talent pool through purity tests that are not being demanded anymore on the right, like that they used to be. So this all, you know, the seminal moment of even Jordan Peterson, Bill C-16, to me as a young man, just, you know, 7-8 years ago, like this idea of agency and self-respect. Yeah, Neil, that is, the frame is breaking incredibly right now. And even I saw Kale, and I guess I didn't pull it up on my bookmark list I made, but you know, there's Sean Spicer. I think at one point he was the communications director for the Trump office, but he's doing a news report, and they're pulling up randos out of the comment section, just like Paul Vanderklay. And so yeah, so here's Slack's point. The left is every bit as fractious as the right, but the right had the vastly superior message for these times. And it is these times, because it's going to break apart. The pendulum's going to swing back and forth between these tensions, these poles of the politic. But sometimes that should be being celebrated in a certain way about American democracy. So let's see. I want to bring my conversation again with the old Zoomers here. Let me see. Let me pull this up. Really, really enjoyed that conversation with Joseph and Afriel and Noah Foxman. It was a lot of fun. I want to bring up a section from that.
Woefully unprepared to interact with someone like Paul. I just think the reason why Gamergate keeps getting brought up is I think this was a landmark case of people somewhat intelligently grappling with movements in culture that otherwise had just been, it's just, some crazy thing, or you just didn't acknowledge it. I don't know. But it feels like it's been just a continually bouncing back and forth of things until this kind of niche in TLC has kind of, straightened out this bouncing between various talking heads and movement away from comment sections or Twitter, back and forth to just a conversational face-to-face thing, which is, I think, kind of a rare phenomenon, that you get people to even talk like just normal people. So
this almost this idea of bringing the comment section, like that is the thing that's kind of the lurker to, like when Grail Country and Luke was doing that, like the first part of this year, it was like this, like who's gonna pop out of the comment section, baby?
Yeah.
When are you good? You know, we call it lurker, but you have this whole culture of comment section on Reddit. Like that's a whole culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's an interesting point that TLC is something like a part of its nature is the comment section achieving consciousness, or, you know, like
coming out of the fourth wall.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've not heard that one. I mean, we have words for like outer lurkerdom, but like that this is, it almost is like the giving the legitimizing and personalizing the comment section.
Well, and it's kind of interesting, the way that Noah brought it up was making me think a big part of why there's that trust engendered by this space. A lot of other internet personalities are very, very careful to show a carefully crafted image of themselves. And you can kind of tell that that's the case, and it's still entertaining. But because of the level of exposure that Gen Z and younger millennials have had to that content on the internet, and they've seen a lot of their heroes fall as a consequence of whatever misbehavior, there's been this learning to be able to detect that, to be able to see that,
to detect the bullshit. So, you know, that this again, I'm going back to this idea of agency, of personhood, that we see more clearly in broken down in a podcast versus a news form. And you see narrative be more crafted by the person and their personal agency than by the larger picture, because talking points break down after a certain amount of time. Is there anything beneath the talking points? Is there a person there? And that's what is there a conversation to be had versus an ideological debate? And so we see that here. We participate in that here, virtually, not alone. It's podcasts, 3-hour conversations have changed the world. And they've changed it so much that Trump's presidency this time doesn't seem more like a fluke. It seems more like a result of something real that was taking place culturally. And, you know, we have, I haven't got to watch the full Peterson Peugeot conversation that just launched, but you know, you grow up kind of in the Protestant nature of things, and you're kind of told, you know, there's only one man you should look to. And on a certain level, like as a Christian, I believe that, but there are also real people. We look for people that can I trust you, person? Are you a responsible person? Can I place a certain amount of faith in you? Yes, men will fail you. Yes, I have failed people. I will fail you, but can I learn from that failure? Can I, you know, become a better person? And that was also part of the conversation that Neil and McMo were having in certain ways. I wish I could have taken part of. But, you know, it just comes back to having the ability to do something yourself and speak your mind, as they say, in a way. It is liberating, this whole endeavor that I'm a part of. Welcome to yours truly, a place we go to think out loud. To not be trapped inside your head, not trapped inside of your cell, but in this place together, thinking. And there's already, even in this comment section, I just think you see people having substantive points being made from different, you know, political leanings, and I think that that's really generative and encouraging. So let's see. I had another. Yeah, I wanted to bring this in. I want to look at the people a little bit. Look at, say, you know, you're crazy if you don't think Elon Musk, if you think it's conspiratorial, or if you just think that he's really trying to do something. What's up, Bryce? If you just think he's really trying to, like follow his own telos, you know, like his own agency, which he has a ton of, but he still runs into gridlocks with, you know, different structures. But, you know, this conversation that came out between Naval Ravikant and Scott Adams. I'm so bad at names. Let's see if I can get that one pulled up. We will remove. So I probably am going to have to get a better computer because this stuff's pretty laggy. I'm operating off of a 2013 MacBook Air. Let's see here. No, here it is. We'll share this up. Are we there yet? Let's bring it onto the screen. All right, piece of this conversation here.
Down doors. If we all fight them at once, they always lose. North Korea would be free if everyone in that giant open air gulag could organize in one action in one moment, but they can't coordinate, so they get picked off one by one like dissidents. The same way like Twitter can, you know, the old Twitter before Elon took over, kick off people one by one, but they couldn't all leave in a huff to another side at the same time. They couldn't organize because Twitter is the organization mechanism. So the single most consequential thing that freed this country is Elon bought X. And the best tweet I saw on this was from Greg Fodor. He had this great tweet. He said, I can't believe that he noticed that the 80% completed Imperial Death Star and just bought it. They'd basically been building this Death Star to control all of news media forever, and they were using it left and right. It was 80% done, and he just bought it. And there's a really ironic, there's many ironic sub-stories in there, but one of my favorites is that when he went to buy it, he offered the 44 billion, right? I think it was 42 because he loves that number, right? He's just loves it.
420. Yeah, so Elon Musk buying Twitter, Naval Ravikant. I've just, it's, you know, when you have a confirmation bias, it was like this, I think this was a huge deal. I think this was a huge deal. And again, I'm just going to go back to this point, this religious, spiritual point of freedom and the word and the logos and speech, all these things, you know, this crux and this intensity that shot Jordan Peterson out of it with the Bill C-16 and the interviews about whether he's going to use, you know, pronouns and these kinds of things. It intersects with what it means, you know, this concept of freedom and what it means to be American in certain ways. And of course, there's always the opposite argument of you know, hate speech and all these things. I just can't, in the last decade, to watch these shifts in culture. You know, it's coming, it keeps coming in different forms, and we're seeing it. It's part of the reason that even in financial markets, like with Bitcoin versus traditional finance, there's these issues of trust and control and personal agency versus giving personal agency away. And so I think that that's just to take it back to that idea of the boss from Office Space and the guy at the computer in the cubicle, just with such low agency. And then to hear the commentators talk about these low agency men, that's who they're speaking to. And Dems should be telling them to lose their agency more and get a feminist, you know, become feminist. And of course, yeah, like I appreciate certain aspects of the feminist movement in a certain way, but you know, it's gone too far and on all of that. And we're just seeing a referendum on, but I don't want to like be hyperbolic. You know, we see these on all sorts of different fractal levels, like that conversation I had with the Zoomers. And what they were experiencing was on Reddit, you know, Substack things and within Reddit. And then all of a sudden, like someone would start censoring people on that. And it was, Naval had an interesting point where he was saying like they were picking people off Twitter, you know, like one at a time. And so instead, if they would have done everybody, you know, like if you've ever said this, it would have created this automatic switch. But if you do it one at a time, it creates a type of fear and anxiety. And then, you know, and they still maintain control. And he referenced Twitter being like the Death Star, like this complete circle of social media and legacy news networks with social media turning into the Death Star from the Empire. And it was almost complete. And then Elon Musk said, I'm just going to buy it. And he took a whole leg out of that operation. So, you know, people can call me conspiratorial on all that stuff. You know, go back and see if you think the Twitter files meant anything. Let's see. I have, what do I want to do here? I think let's look back, make sure that I didn't on the podcast. We already looked at all that. Yeah, no, we're good. I guess the last point is, and I think we had somebody in the hive mind over here quote Elon Musk's, one of his first tweets after the election was, "You are the media now." And we talk about profilicity here in this little corner of the internet. Who are we? We're these avatars from the neck up, from the chest up, or our little pictures, and we are the media now. And I can get on here and I'm going to say my honest opinion on some level, so in a way, and have interaction with you guys over here. So it's Friday. I don't think Paul did a live stream, but if anyone wants to hang out, I'm going to drop the link, and we can do some conversation craft together here on the Yours Truly Live. So that's about all I've got on pod. 3-hour conversations change the world. The podcast election. I'd love to get so I won. What's the Kumbaya plan? Kumbaya plan is TLC, baby. The Kumbaya plan is keep having conversations. There's a difference between like I didn't win something as a person, like something here we go. What is up, Chad, the girl dad? Ooh.
What up, homie?
Roof.
That's
What's up?
Wiggles. That's Rigsby. Yeah, I'm over here burning some leaves, dude. Listening to you. I figured I'd do the Propolicity expansion pack, and you can actually get my whole body.
Like that. Propolicity expansion pack.
So yeah, we're burning some leaves. This is one of the great things about living in the semi-rural country, as well as the full-on country. Now you're gonna get smoked out over there. So
do you do firecrackers? Y'all get to do firecrackers?
You can, but I'm not really into that. My dogs don't like it. So I get kind of pissy with my neighbors when they start doing it. I feel like an old man, you know, like, you sons of bitches. Stuff like that.
You got any questions in the chat? People could throw out some questions we could take on right now.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Chat.
Yeah, I want to ask you about this idea.
Go for it.
That I keep that's just this strange intuition that, you know, once this either way, it was going to be the same in some sense, that, you know, Trump now is kind of like out of the political running, so you can't really use him. They might be able to use him for like the next 4 years to still kind of do some bitching and moaning, but like once he's kind of off the table as a player in the game, like they just lost a huge part of their strategy, you know, like, do you see what I'm saying? So like, you can't just construct Trump out of nothing. So you can't like just, who's like the next Trump, you know, you can't just make somebody out of nothing.
I think hopefully no one wants to like keep the Trump model as the status quo on as far as his, you know, the intensity of some of his rhetoric or whatever, just, you know, the personality nature of it. But you do see, I think this time is very different because there was an actual coalition before no one wanted to coalition with Trump. It was just like kind of a,
oh no,
it was kind of a middle finger to Hillary Clinton.
what I'm saying
like,
is the left won't be able to use Trump as their
punching bag,
as their leverage. Yeah, because he was like, he made it easy in some sense because of his rhetoric, and the tools that they had. They were able to construct all sorts of bullshit. And so, like, how do you do that now without Trump? Is what I'm trying to say, and in such an effective way.
Well, I mean, it wasn't ultimately effective. I mean, it was powerful. Yeah. It was powerful, but I think it lost. I mean, if it was effective and 2020 was legitimate, then that's where it peaked. So, so there's that. And yeah, they're going to have to find a new, I think that is part of this podcast question is like, you are going to have to actually construct a unifying positive vision for the future. And the right was able to do that in a really powerful way. So I want to, that's what they're going to have to do. And look, and it will probably make them, because here's the thing, if they would have put Kennedy on their ticket, they would have won. Like, it's that simple. So they're going to have to like reckon with that idea. And Trump's just saying, yeah, Kennedy, I can really maybe give you what you want. So what makes you trust that they will actually drain the swamp? My opinion on this is simply that he has a coalition of actual executives around him, people that have fired people and people that have actually done that in their real life, like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. And they've actually been executives. And so I think
he's a boomer. He boomers and some early Gen Zers really value legacy.
Yeah.
And so like I think like that will be leverage to actually get some shit done, because you want to try to mend the legacy that's there.
Yeah. That was Joe Rogan said he implored Trump to not be mean to the Democrats. Phlebas has a question here. What's up, Michael, by the way? Does the ability to drone on for 3 hours really make you more real, a better person, or a better leader? Well,
that's such a great Canadian question.
I think that you can ask the question to that voter that MSNBC talked to. She just didn't seem like a real person. I don't know if better is the correct adjective to put before that, because I think it's just a person. Can a person talk for 3 hours in a conversation when political things are at stake and have more to say than the political things that are at stake? Like, if you can't get outside that box, then that doesn't show a sense of agency. So I don't look at it as like, is this a better person, I mean, I can have that opinion, like, and what is better? There's postmodern in me, I guess. But
ever since I've had 3-hour conversations, my life has gotten so much better. You too can have 3-hour conversations, and your life can get better too. Sign up today for this little corner of the internet.
But well, that's partial. That's kind of, I mean, ask people that talk to Paul. I don't know. This thing's built off of, TLC's built off of 2-hour conversations with Paul Vanderklay. And as far as like a better leader, I think a person that can communicate in a genuine way, and that's the thing, is a better leader. That to get more hard on that. Michael, you got thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that the 3-hour conversation thing, definitely is just, you can't hide a fake persona for 3 hours very easily. So whatever comes through from that experience is more real, and I think it's good that people have gotten accustomed to knowing these kind of things, about people, like, because it holds people to a higher standard of something, I mean, like, and obviously I think the whole fact that like it's Donald Trump is still this weird like cosmic sense of God's humor or something, because
Sorry.
I'm having echoes.
Oh no, that's Bryce. Maybe to turn off your YouTube app, maybe.
Oh, sorry about that.
We can hear your air conditioner.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. Well, so my thoughts listening to the whole thing is, just seeing how like people have really been so distraught, like, because they were lied to so much, and the I think as for what Chad's saying, like, what are they going to do now that, like, Donald Trump's kind of like in and he's not going to be like up for election. They kind of really, like, they had their one shot, or this is the end of the road for the thing. It was so much just inducing fear into people and telling them that, like, if this happens, it's going to be so horrible, and you just have to stop it at all costs. Like, that was such a disingenuous thing to do, like, to sell that as a possibility when it was always possible that he could win. And that's not true, because, and I mean, some people felt that way 4 years ago. Like, some conservative people felt that way 4 years ago. And I mean, I felt that way to some extent, because it was like in the midst of the COVID thing. And it was like, well, this party's so much more prone to authoritarian tendencies, and it happens within already like this emergency situation. So yeah, I felt some panic, and I know a lot of other people did, but we got through it. We're okay. And then I think everybody, so everybody that was a conservative was basically like, you know what, it is possible that the Democrats could win and Kamala could win, and if that's the case, we're just going to try to go on with our life. So that was everybody's position that was on the conservative side. The other side was totally convinced that it was this life or death thing, which is just not true. So I think it's good. It's good that they'll get through that.
Not only did we get through that first one, but my life got so much better. And ever since I've done 3-hour conversations, my life has gotten better. Sign up today for TLC.
I want to address Phlebas here in the chat. I'm just asking because you're suggesting it's a leadership requirement now. I don't have any problem. If you want to call it a requirement, I would call it like a tradition. Hey, go sit down and like, this be a great litmus test. Sit down with Rogan or whoever's next in that line. Like, I would say like one of these political traditions now, and we've had these forever. Oh, we've got to have the 60 minutes interview. We've had versions of that. They just haven't been as fourth wall shattering. And you saw the 60 minutes thing even get shattered this year with they were editing her Kamala's conversation. And so all that stuff, like, and I am interested, the whole, I don't want to get down on, there's all these TikToks of girls mainly screaming about the election. And, like Michael said, it could be really good. Like, hey, you survived this in 4 years. The world didn't end. Like, you're a stronger person now. And hope that could be it could be very beneficial. But dude, Bryce, you're in. What's up, man? Haven't seen you in a minute. How you been?
Hey, it's great to see you guys.
Yes, sir. Good to see you too.
Yeah. I just thought I'd jump in. Saw you broadcasting, and my big takeaway is from this election is there's a lot about politics and history. Though I have taught it for like 15 years in high school, there's just so much I don't know, because I did not vote for Trump. So, and neither do I think the world's going to end. Okay. So, but there is something wildly out of touch in the mainstream from what we heard and what happened in a matter of 8 hours, that I just come away saying, wow, there's something I don't know, and I need to go learn about how politics and history actually work. Because the gap between what we heard on mainstream media and what actually happened, again, it's like an echo of 2016.
And so are you saying that you had a different perception of something going into the election? Is that what you're saying personally?
I thought that the reports that it would be close were at least somewhat in touch with reality, and it just wasn't.
Yeah. That would go back to even Phlebas's, like, just asking, like, what's the substantive nature of the podcast? Like, I think that regardless of, I don't know, I didn't have that. Of course, no one can know for sure. And there was a lot of different tension around the last election related to the vote and everything. But I think that actually, regardless of if it was true or not, it made this election better because more people had, like, their antennas were up regardless. It's like, well, I'm going to defend this democratic process, or I'm going to watch this democratic process closer. And it actually ended up both doing the same thing. And so I think that's good. And, but it is interesting, the framing. And the thing I was going to say is, like, should people be required, should leadership or presidents be required to go on this stuff? I just think that, I think required is, I think he was just saying, should it be, a tradition now? And because that's what I was watching, that seemed to inform my reality better. Like, I felt like, these people are positive. They feel good about the race in a way that isn't just them saying it. They're kind of explaining why. I'm listening to them go into kind of just like, let me just talk to you like I'm talking to you at the bar about why I think this is, instead of like, and everyone's crafting narrative to a certain degree. Like, we can't get around that, but like, to a lesser degree than I'm going to talk about this for 10 minutes to get the message out to keep our base at a certain tenor. It's like, well, listen to this guy kind of just go over it. And if you were watching, I mean, I'll just say it, some of, like, the Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA were intentionally, and the PAC that was supporting them were on college campuses intensely over the last 2 months. And, like, say what you want to say about them, they were on social media. If you were watching them, like, talk to these kids, and these kids, even more than in 2016, people are on TikTok and people are on social media and so I was watching them change kids' minds. And I was also seeing, if you related that back to the street when Steven Crowder was on people's campuses and it was a completely hostile environment. Now, when these guys were on campuses, it was not a completely hostile environment. Yeah. And so you could see a tenor, you could see a cult, like, and like I said, no one knows what's going to happen. But so my perspective going in, not watching mainstream news really at all, was I did not have, like, it seemed to track with what ended up playing out in a certain way.
Yeah. So I am a never Trumper. So I am to this day. I hate him. I have always hated him from the day that he rode down his escalator. I have opposed Donald Trump. And this is the complicated part. I've watched my oldest boy is a sophomore, and then I've got a 7th grader, and then a 6th grader. So each one of them are making arguments for why Trump is not bad and why, Dad, you should vote for Trump. And I'm hearing this, and I'm thinking this has to be a product of conversations at school. He has figured out something. There's an appeal to boys and young men that I think those of us who were formed in a more liberal leaning cultural moment in education and just the cultural conversation, we
like
just
classical liberals,
and maybe, yeah, exactly. Because I don't get me wrong, I grew up from Kansas. I am not left, but I am not that. I'm not MAGA. So to watch this happen, there's something that is connecting, and there's a gap there between how boys and young men are finding an echo and a resonance for their voice. And I've just come away from this election saying, wow, I got some homework to do. I need to understand more about what's going on. And I'm also refusing the temptation. This is not the end of the world. Like, we're going to be fine. And we just need to learn to listen to one another.
So we keep saying that it's going to be podcasts, but it's not just podcasts. I mean, part of the reason why I think Rogan was such a sledgehammer to this thing was because it was Rogan. You know, there's thousands of hours of Rogan talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has to do, there is a level of personality, of trust built there. So it wouldn't just be, I mean, yeah, I didn't watch the Theo Von Vance. I did watch some of the Trump ones. But so it's not just going to be like, oh, you just go start a podcast and get popular and then there you go. I mean, you know, it's not going to work like that. It is going to have to be, there's going to be a lot of trust that's being built throughout the whole thing. This is wild. So my wife in 2016, before I even knew her, she told me that she was a never Trumper. Now she grew up conservative, like NRA, card carrying member of NRA since she was 12 years old, all this shit, you know. And so she's born, you know, in a conservative home. She's very temperamentally conservative, and she did not like Trump, probably for a lot of the same reasons you did. But mostly it was like she thought he was a pompous ass on Apprentice. Okay. And she's also like a classical. She would say that she's a real feminist. That's what she would say.
Yeah.
And not like these floozy bitches. That's probably the words. She wouldn't use those words. I'm putting those words in her mouth. I'm being flippant. Please forgive me. But the thing is like, and then in 2020, I think she reluctantly voted Trump. And then last week on Monday night when she went to bed, she told me that she prayed that Kamala Harris would not become president. That is wild for me to hear. It is just ridiculous to hear that. And then first thing she did when she woke up is she called me and she was like rejoicing. And this is just so insane for me because this is not really her temperament, but like I think what she was really terrified of really was that she was hoping that people weren't that stupid. And so she was relieved to find out that people weren't as stupid as the media was making everybody out to be, because that's really what's happening. Is kind of like this infantilizing. And so I think she was relieved that, you know, we're going to bring a daughter into this world and it's not as stupid as the people were saying it is. So that's kind of cool.
Not Michael Satori, but Michael Headphones. Michael, do you want to, you've popped in. Do you want to share something, or are you hanging out?
Yeah. So, let me know a little bit about my background, like the leftist politics, Occupy Wall Street, what have you. When Trump was elected back in 2016, I was helping found like PAC in Tennessee to like with Indivisible, like to resist and like all those things, right? Like we were pretty enraged about it. Voted for Biden in 2020. And to my surprise, not only did I vote for Trump this time, but like excitedly so. I found myself on the friendly with the Aaron McIntyres, even with the new right Yarvin thinking. The through line with all of it that I've found, you know, going all the way back to post Iraq war, anti-establishment, like Cheney, Bush are war criminals, blah blah blah. There's a through line of anti-establishment thinking, right? So folks like Yarvin refer to it as the cathedral, or you hear the blob or the deep state or what have you, right? And this coalition that seems to have manifested from Tulsi to RFK to Musk to, it's a different coalition that's surrounded Trump, right? With a very new right, traditional kind of value thinking. It's very different from the pseudo neocons that rallied around Trump. I mean, you look at something like Pence or the larger circles around Trump back in 2016. It's a very different dynamic, but some people describe it as like a Malthusian bargain, right? Where let's say the Peter Thiels and the Elon Musks and the whatever, are looking at like the salt of the earth folks like my dad, who's like bought I don't know how many My Pillow Guy pillows, right, and has been a Trump supporter since 2015, and has found common ground in order to do this anti-establishment thing. So my dad, not being a terribly intellectual guy necessarily, God love him, and I said terrible things to him. I called him the modern day equivalent of a Ku Klux Klan sympathizer, and that I was ashamed of him. This is the kind of stuff that I was saying just 2017, right? And I had to come back to him, with the perspective change that I've had now, with a lot of egg on my face. So just to throw another perspective in the mix, I'm watching like all these Trump videos come out there, how hard they're going to go against social media censorship, to standardizing federal documents on gender, to across the board. Like, we're watching these things come out, and like we all kind of know what they're going to roll out and how they're thinking. And to the surprise of my even 2020 self, like, I'm very enthusiastic about it. So I'm just watching that play out in me.
I think words and deeds for me, and then Mark D. Parker, I'll let you go. That I took down a tweet that I made today to a guy who works for Christianity Today, and I was like, he does a lot of kind of both sides perspective, but I was like, to me, it's words and deeds. Trump says all these things. What does he do? And then you have this other side that says they say all these things, and what do they do? And, his point was that Kamala Harris was like trying to had a more moderate message. I was like, but what is her voting record? What has she done in office? Like, it's not an issue. Like, look at their policies. I'm a policy fight, look at their policies. What are they saying? It's like, I don't care what they say. I don't care. I don't care what, how bombastic Trump is. Like, what is he going to do? And I think that's kind of part of my perspective on it. Not that I think he's a bastion of American values and a great role model on many levels. But I will say one more thing about the podcast, and then Mark D. Parker, was that I actually didn't get to, that I forgot, was this thread that he put a 27-year-old guy in charge of getting him lined up for podcasts, and he started pitching him to Trump, and Trump said, I don't know. Go ask Barron. And this is to your point, Bryce. Barron, he finally, Melania didn't want Barron to be involved in the process that much, respectably so. And apparently he was able to talk to Barron, and Barron gave him the list. And Trump listened to his 18-year-old son tell him who to go talk to. You have to reckon with that. And he's a young man. He's a white privileged young man in the world, as privileged as you can get. And yet he was resonating with your sons, Bryce. I don't know.
Christian, can I make 2 points on that?
If you want to, I want to make sure Mark gets to talk. But
yeah. Go, Mark.
Go ahead, Mark.
Are you sure? I want to, before anybody leaves, this is a really good panel for this question. For liberals, let's say establishment liberals, the Joe Rogan source type of the long form discussion source was Charlie Rose. He got Me Too'd in 2017 or something like that, wasn't it?
Yep.
And went off the air for a long time. Up until that point, he was getting about 5 million. I actually did some research on this. He got about 5 million views per night on average through the 90s and into the 2000s until his career crashed.
Mm-hmm.
That outperforms Rogan on an average daily basis. Rogan killed it with Trump. I don't know what he's up to on views for that interview, but it's crazy numbers. But on average, but that was the liberal source for long form talking information. And I think I just, it's a suspicion. I'm wondering if you guys have any thoughts, if maybe that's has been a part of that loss of quality information damaged the Democratic electorate in this election space.
I'll take a swing. And I think there's two things, that was on television, and so that is a different medium. But I agree with you that Charlie Rose, like when you said that was like, oh yeah. The other piece is that Joe Rogan gets called an extremist by legacy media when he's a Bernie Sanders liberal. Like and so I think that's also part of the problem.
Isn't that platform envy? Isn't that a little bit of platform envy between old media and new?
Sure it is. Yeah, I'm sure it is. But it's also a cultural problem because if you're going to call, like, you rejected him. Tim Pool wasn't, the only people that would come on Tim Pool's podcast were conservatives, and he became more conservative. Like and so because
Jordan Peterson said the same thing too. He tried to get Democrats to come talk to him, and they wouldn't.
So there's
blue church reformation, baby.
Yeah, I think it swings wider. The medium is a big part of it, but it's also the fact that Charlie Rose. I don't know neocons and neoliberals and stuff, but like, and then there's this also piece. I think that looking at the professional credentialed class, they've lost a lot of credibility. And Charlie Rose was whether I don't think it would be his Me Too for dudes that lost his credibility for a certain, but like I'm talking about like a larger thing about losing credibility and who do I think I trust? He's crazy and he's a comedian and he says Joe Rogan has said some terrible things that you wouldn't think are diplomatic. He did put on a button-up shirt whenever he talked to the president, though. I did see that, but like, but it's like, that's also a generational thing. Elon Musk and Joe Rogan are both Gen X, but that comedy almost became the only place where people were able to find versions of the truth that weren't trying to be narrativized or demonized on the legacy media. And I think they could get away with it because they could call it comedy, but everyone knew that it was calling the emperor not wearing any clothes.
Well, it's just that Charlie talked to everybody. I'm sorry.
Community. Not only that comedy community, the entertainment community, those people, that's a very, very small community. And you start shitting on like one of like just kind of like some of the crazy stuff that happened around even Chappelle. I mean, you don't think Chappelle had some like what happened with the Chappelle stuff and things like that had nothing to do with like what happened here? It's just all stacks up. And so again, if you want to have a better life, I spent the last 3 years of my life doing the TLC. 3-hour conversations has changed my life. It can change yours too.
All right,
it's just
Mark.
My question was: he talked to everybody. Rogan talks to everybody. Charlie talked to everybody, and that gives each of their audiences a perspective that's less narrow, less siloed. That's the question I had for the guys, and I appreciate the response, Christian. Thank you.
Yeah, man. What else you guys got?
Well, so if you wouldn't mind me taking a swing on some of that too.
Yeah, go for it.
So part of it is a technology change thing, right? So it was the same thing with Kennedy when he was running, right, and appealing to TV. So that's part of what's going on. So adopting the new platform change in this instance does seem to have had a net effect. Then further than that, there's within the political games, like the officials that are running, when you have a candidate that's running, it's about staying on messaging, right? So they memorize lines. Here's a thing, right? We know that this will like work with the crowd. It's been tested, and so they'll say those same things over and over again. But the problem is with the technology changes now, you can record Kamala, comp them all together, put them all together in one thing, right? And then she looks like a lunatic saying the same thing to the same crowd, to different crowds all over the place. So it looks bad, right? Whereas people who are speaking more candidly and off the cuff, right? Then that's a big difference. I think the other part of it is that the post-60 sexual revolution folks ultimately ended up becoming the establishment. And there was a convergence of them and neocons post-Bush. So it wasn't okay to be a neocon Cheney Bush supporter post-Iraq war. So there was a big shift of where all those folks, including Wall Street folks, because they didn't want to be associated with that anymore, did this like Obama swap, right? So, and then it culminates even further. And I watched this happen. Vivek writes about it really well. He was in Wall Street watching it happen. I was in a tent on the ground watching it happen. And this was right around the Trayvon Martin drama, right? So there was a huge push towards social justice rights, right? Like gender, race, Marxism, let's say. And then Wall Street was like, hey, we're getting all this pressure from the economic activists that are focused on like Glass-Steagall and amending the Constitution. And like, here's all these Occupy people freaking out about this stuff and forcing that conversation. So they go to that large tent that we have, right, with all those different groups, the eco-activists, social justice warriors, Ron Paul libertarians, all this thing. They go, hey, the group of you that is really passionate about social justice warrior things, we're cool with you, right? We'll attack gender, and like you can bring in your DEI programs. They didn't call it that yet. You can do all of that. Just don't touch our taxes. Don't talk to us about minimum wage. We're not going to touch the economic stuff. So there was a corroboration, right, where the Democrats, and especially the wealthy Democrats around there that were former neocons and Wall Street folks, were willing to take on identity politics. And so then it became like a real heavy establishment thing that we watched continue to roll out over the next following years. And this is also why you see something like the DNC going out of their way to shut down the Bernie movement, right, in 2015-16. So that's how I watched that play out.
I want to speak to Bryce's point back about his kids, because I showed this earlier in the conversation. It was my conversation with the Zoomers roundtable that I had out, and I was talking to a buddy of mine who's their age. That when I went back to community college to become a nurse, like I started hanging out with him, and he was like 18 and I was 31, and to Joseph's point, and some people over here in the comments are making some heck jokes and stuff, but like, to be able to, they were like, the internet used to be fun. And then the Gamergate thing clamped down on the fun of the internet. And it's hard for us to conceptualize if you didn't ever do online gaming, and even if you were doing LAN parties or like, but that was attached. It's kind of like this being attached to Twitter, like that was attached to Reddit. And then censorship came down hard in Reddit because these young people were being activated, and people and the DEI started getting rolled out also through the video games, and they were watching it acutely happen. And it's like, can't make jokes anymore. And they saw influencers like go from being like silly on Reddit to all of a sudden they were like one guy said he had on Jordan Peterson one week and then he was trashing him the next week because the cultural intensity of that like clamped everything down. And so there's a playfulness to Trump, you have to admit. And when I was watching him in 2016, he's, again, don't hear me say he's the bastion of, like morality. That's not what I'm saying. There's other aspects of it. There's a playful aspect of the jokes It's like, he said he's going to put Hillary Clinton in jail. He never did, but it was funny as hell. Like, you know, I think you have to, you know, that's also a piece.
I just jumping in. Totally agree. I think in some sense, the irony of this is, here's Kamala Harris. Technically, is she Gen X? Like, she's right on the border, right? So she definitely resonates with the Gen X. And
she's my age.
And
she's my age.
She is. So she's right at the seam, right between Boomer and Gen X. She's right kind of in that between space. And yet, exactly what you just said, all those clips of reciting the exact same phrases, it just, who's willing to go with the teleprompter script and who isn't. Like, that's one way to frame this.
Yeah. Is that Steve McGee?
Bryce. It's Bryce. I don't know if you know Bryce. You know Bryce Carlisle?
No, I don't. I gotta. Oh, maybe I do. Yeah. Is this the guy that was at? He was at Burning Man. Is that the Burning Man dude?
No.
Okay. No. Okay.
He's a classical educator out of Austin. Classical educator out of Austin.
Nice. Well, I should get going real quick, but I do want to say one last thing before I get going. I know we didn't get Bernie Sanders, and that's but I tell you what, these last few years I've had the life-changing experience here in the TLC, and you too can get your universal basic attentional income if you just join today. Dial 1-900-TLC. Thanks, everybody. Now I have to walk.
Thanks for holding up the branding on the for this stream, Chad. I don't have great branding. My my political or politics live stream with Matthew got demonetized. All my songs were covers. So the money that Jacob gave me was like not didn't happen. So I don't have great branding. It has to be non-copyright. Anyways, fun times. What were you going to say something else, Bryce? I don't know if I got there.
No, I think just that she was okay. So she was willing on the positive side to rehearse scripts and have that recorded, and knowing that that's going to get clipped and recycled and published again. But then she wasn't willing to go on Joe Rogan, except on her terms of 1 hour, kind of on her location. And I think that's just really significant. I think at the end of the day, that probably, I don't know what statistically did that impact in terms of people how they voted. It's more of a reflection than a cause, but just how out of touch the whole tone, and she didn't have a lot of time to figure out how to do this, to do it well. But I don't know, maybe in another sense, she had 4 years. It's not like she got the vice president position and then wasn't thinking about the future. She's had a lot of time to think about this. I don't like Trump. I can't stand him. I have never liked him, and yet I'm through my sons and through this result, I'm forced into a place of ignorance, and like I need to step back and say, what did I not understand about how this whole history and politics and communication thing works? And by the way, I'm a humanities. My entire adult career has been in teaching. And teaching humanities and how to communicate. Like I'm sort of just embracing this. I be in a spot of learning, and just step back from the like or dislike and just, all right, something's going on here.
I think a really fascinating thing that took place in Pennsylvania, and I think that's a place you have to look because that was like a linchpin for the election, was that a gay I don't know if you call him a gay MAGA activist convinced like 180,000 Amish people to vote.
Yeah, Scott Pressler.
So you have to, he's gay. Why is he not voting for the gay team? Because that, like, you have to look at the Overton window has shifted so far. The Overton window has shifted so far that
we would say that he is.
That he what?
So this is the Chappelle joke, right? right? About the L's and the B's and the G's not getting along with the T's and the Q's, right? Yep. So that, and there is, like, again, you know, in these circles that I remember being in, even talking to gays and lesbians, right, is still a conformity to patriarchal constructs, where you go, you're still dealing with this gender normativity, which is bullshit, right? It's this postmodern critique, right, of an inheritance of patriarchal views, and that has to be broken down. That's not what gender is, so on and so forth. So in a sense, if Scott Pressler being probably a good example of somebody that sees that, right, goes, this isn't the team that you think it is.
Yeah, that's the and you know, to the point of why would they vote against their self-interest? Why are the immigrants voting against their self-interest? Why are the gays voting against their self-interest? Why are you hear that line over and over again? And then Liz Cheney campaigns with Kamala Harris, and it's like, whose interests? Like, and I mean, like, they're not telling Tulsi Gabbard to shut up and be quiet, and they're not, you know, Dave Rubin loves the right. Like, the Overton window is shifted a lot in that way, and you know, and who you put up as your icon of you know, ideological purity, you know, into certain positions, like, or like, I think there's also the meritocratic thing that it's like, it blows my mind. Elon Musk was a Democrat or whatever till 3 years ago. It blows my mind that the guy who was able to get electric cars, solar, battery powered into the infrastructure of the Western society, like, he pushed it into being, and he got told that he was evil. You're an evil billionaire. Sorry, we just need a bunch of like millionaires to fix this problem or something. Or you, and then you hear these stories of Starlink being used even in Ukraine, Starlink being used in North Carolina, and it's like, why did you push him away? Why did you push, like, and then the narrative just shifts so quick. Evil billionaire. It's like, somebody had, you know, like, and that there's just so much there to me.
I think the key thing, and that is really unique about the situation. Well, okay, so the bad part is that the link I put in the little private chat, it just outlines, like, basically the strategy that was focus on few topics, basically, and just make them super, you know, hot issues, and all negative, and just basically, you know, which is basically the strategy was Trump is Hitler. And, you know, I think the thing is that you know, so for one thing, it's purely negative. So that's the self-interest was just the aversion of something awful. That was what the self-interest
not being
was.
Cool. Kind of like not being cool.
It was you're either voting for Trump or against Trump, basically. But the thing is that, you know, in the democratic system that we live, we now have this situation where the parties have basically very strongly split along the lines of men and women. And if you keep comparing Trump and Hitler, eventually you're going to hit a bottom where the thing that they have in common is that they're both male. And therefore, since Hitler is the ultimate embodiment of evil, and Trump is the most similar human being to him, being male is part of being evil, which is, you know, why I shared, like, this book and the Toxic War on Masculinity, because that's what I think the thing is. Like, Trump's not the guy I would have picked. But, like, it was a vote for, it's okay to be a man. There are some good things about masculinity. I think if you look at the team of men around him, there are some, you know, across all those guys, there's a lot of virtues, you know, and that's even why, you know, you have Joe Rogan and Dana White, masculine guys, and, you know, and Robert Kennedy seems like an admirable guy in a lot of ways, and J.D. Vance and all these people. So it's like that was what it was, and I think, the response I see from like the women who are melting down, it indicates to me they have never encountered any kind of boundaries ever, which is why I think this is a good thing for them to go through, because it seems like it's the first time anything has not gone in their way. So,
so jumping in real quick, if you're going to compare Trump to a fascist, Hitler is so obviously not the guy to compare him to. Compare him to Mussolini. Like, Mussolini's out there shirtless on a horse, showing off his mask. Like, he's just all like chutzpah and public image and manipulation. Yeah, a few people get killed, but stop with the Hitler-Trump thing. Okay, you can compare him to Mussolini. You can compare him to Franco. Maybe like, and even there you got to serious qualifications. But I think that's a really good point, Michael. Like, Trump is obviously way outside of the boundaries of normal, the way that the masculinity is conducted as a presidential, public leading figure, and we need to have some perspective and some I don't know, some judgment about this, and hold it within some more realistic boundaries. The whole Hitler-Trump thing is just so stupid.
I think that I want to, yeah, Mark, go ahead. And this was the wrong one.
Just real on the point.
See it, Mike.
I think even Mussolini's still pretty extreme, and I would and Franco was a pretty bad character, a real butcher. He's just, the history isn't known as well. I would just compare Trump to more contemporary autocratic type of figures like Orban in Hungary or Netanyahu in Israel. A little fast and loose with the constitutional conventions. A little autocratic. Some not afraid to try to use power to pad his pocketbook or whatever, and try. So I just don't think he's that bad compared to those figures. I mean, those guys are Franco, Mussolini, Hitler, way over the top. But yeah, that was my only point. And I probably should go at this point, but I think you're making good points, and I really appreciate you guys answering the question that I put forward. And thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Christian.
Yeah, man. I want to highlight this point that Slack made, which is Trump's margin was greater than the entire Amish population in Pennsylvania. They could have all stayed home and he still have won. And that's why I think it's symbolic, because the thing that happened is they responded to government overreach or regulation on their milk or something like that, which, we can have conversations about, well, what if people get sick from the milk? I mean, they're the Amish. They've been doing things like, they just didn't, at that point, there was a new regulation. I don't even know the details of the story, but they got, it activated them in a way that's symbolic to greater cultural forces. And we can talk about who Trump might be like, but we can also talk about what has been done in an authoritarian way to our country in specific instances, whether that's some form of collusion with social media or whether that's to the Amish, leave them alone. They should be able to be grandfathered in, into something else, within their ways of doing things. So I don't know, just a thought.
So Bryce
But I saw a clip of an Amish guy being interviewed about how they were restricted, but he didn't reference anything specific. Was there something that the Biden administration did to clamp down on the Amish?
I think it had to do with milk. And there were some milk memes out for a while, and I didn't know where they originated from, but now that I'm understanding, I think it came from regulation on their milk, not being pasteurized or something like that.
No raw milk thing. Yeah. Because that affects more people than just the Amish. We got shut out from a raw milk group.
Yeah. But you know, but that was for them. That was kind of a, you know, maybe a bigger deal. Were you going to say something, Michael?
Yeah. You know, so one of the things Bryce has been saying, I think he said it once or twice, I really resonated with, I guess in a previous life, where it's like, I can't stand him. It's like the way he speaks. So, you know, I've thought a lot about that as my ears have attuned to Trump and how that can be the case, why it's the case. So I think that there's some kind of, you know, if we did like look way back, go, okay, here's this modernity nominalism thing, right? And this Western Protestantism that's taking hold that culminates in a world power post World War II, where we have certain things that are our sacred ideas that are the founding of us as a global power. This is like FDR administration. Now, don't get me wrong. FDR was a dictator monarchist, basically. 4 terms, and it was extreme times. It's understandable why he would have to step in that way and set up the kind of institution for a world order that's new, right? To try to keep things stable. It makes sense. Of course you would do that, right? Because things got crazy. So you take your 2 big nasty events, take the Holocaust and you take Hiroshima, right? And these are polarizing moments for like what the goodness of Americans are fighting against and never want to happen again. Now, the carefree wandering guy, if you've ever come across him, Paul's talked about him a few times. Hans Mullen, I don't know, his German name, something, a philosopher. He talks about German guilt pride. Right now, Americans especially are largely German, especially at that time. Right, these are Protestant Germans in America. It's not a total hodgepodge. There's a lot of white Germans in America. A lot of them fighting in World War II. So we're looking at the Germans, the Nazis, and we're going, those are our cousins, effectively. Right, that's not far from us. So then both post-World War II Germany and the US in this larger global alliance have this guilt pride thing where the more guilt that you take on about those sins, the higher esteem that you can be held in, which sets the stage for civil rights era plus modern, postmodern ideas about gender and race and so on, where you can take on this big guilt, right, culminating right in the late 2000s, early 2010s of people taking on language like, I'm a cis white male, let me apologize for my privilege, right? So you see all that building up, and there's an attunement to your ears to speak a certain way and to see the world in a certain way. And then maybe you run into like good old Pentecostal down to the earth folks like where I grew up with, and my dad now even, and the way he speaks antagonizes my ego constructed on this post World War II kind of post modernity sort of mindset and framing, amplified by internet coalescence of ideas. Right. And so the things that he speaks directly antagonized the way that my left hemisphere ego has been formed. Right. And it wasn't until that started to get pulled apart, which I have to give Peterson a lot of credit for, that all of a sudden I can see things like, oh, it's ridiculous to compare someone like Trump to Mussolini even, or these other like sort of autocratic figures. This guy's just like an 80s businessman in commercials who just wants like the return of boobs and beer, right? But we've gotten so far down the road on this postmodern leftist path that has become institutionalized that even hearing somebody from the 80s or watching a movie from the 80s is something you'd have to set up trigger warnings for. Right. So it just completely, and I think we're all still sort of coming out of that, where we've got a certain kind of language, a certain kind of decorum, and Trump just doesn't have it in him to abide by any of that. And well over a third of the country, if not half, is just like them. And when they hear him, they hear themselves.
And yet then you get called a fascist Nazi. when you if they're hearing themselves, like, he sounds like me when I've had a beer, like, but I don't think that I'm, you know, that, and or something akin to that. That we can have. There's varying levels of degree to who all sounds like Trump. There's things he said on record that we would hope never to say, but like, I do think that that's interesting because I had an event in my life that I lost all self-respect for myself. And when that happened, getting an A on the test and working hard, I felt a sense of, I really just, oh, this is what self-respect actually is. But a lot of times in certain kind of conversations, we can confuse that with pride. And even then it can be perverted into like the Trump, you know, the Donald of this avatar of boasting and all this kind of, you know, but there is also a side that you're talking about is like, we actually can't have any self-respect. It's actually wrong to have self-respect, you know, because, and so I also think that there's a tension within that on what it means to be like, no, I'm not what they're calling, you know, no, I'm not that. And I can say that, you know, so Bryce, I guess we lost Bryce, but,
well, tempting any ideas about a Western man having any kind of stature or pride, right, to where we had been going was the closest thing to fascism that anyone would experience. To me, the way that I see it now, there's authoritarianism on either side of the pendulum swing. In fact, I even think there's a weird inversion that happens that once you go heavy authoritarianism, communism, right, it'll do this hard military swap thing into fascist authoritarianism. That's what we saw with Stalin. There's other examples historically. And that's how it's often brought about. But I think that also you can have like these war god things, right? Like cults of Mars and Ares, right? Then they can just do like an actual swing into rightist authoritarianism, right? And this is when you start dealing with like god kings that are battling each other. So Trump is something like, if there's a pendulum like that, right? It's like, where's Trump? Well, he's not swinging to the left. In fact, I think a lot of people these days would still call him sort of like a classical liberal, right? Under modernist nominalism thinking, right?
Yeah.
But his larger co-alliance, you know, maybe like swings just like a little bit to the right? Not over here, not into authoritarianism, right? We're not seeing like a whole bunch of boys and Boy Scouts, and we're talking about which race we should crucify. You're talking about even the joke making at Madison Square Garden still results in a large Puerto Rican population support, right? Because these guys are, again, just like 80s Western dudes. That's really all that's going on there.
And that's the America that a lot of people wanted.
Right.
Like they were trapped in like destitute parts of the world looking at 80s America, like 80s, 90s America, watching their movies, you know, in different parts of the world. I think that's such an excellent point on that the 80s thing. Like, what is he really like? What is a really realistic thing? And again, like, you know, I wasn't allowed to watch a lot of those movies in the 80s. So like he also has a little bit of, or a lot of that, you know, but like, but that's not the extreme that's like placed upon him.
Right.
And so if that's all you've heard, you're like, I can't believe this. And there is a lot of things, you know, we could go through all the Twitter fact check of how he was, you know, handled to this point, and why the people kept getting more behind him because they could see how he was being handled by the media. And I think that that's part of, like, I'll take it back to earlier part of this conversation when I showed that David Pakman video. I don't know if you're watching at that time, but like, he's like, I'm losing subscribers. Everybody's losing subscribers. It's because of trust. Because like, if you are promoting those things that were easily debunked, like, you've lost people's trust, related to what they now can figure out for themselves, or people were just sad and they don't want to hear from the liberal side because they're just sad. It could be that too, but I don't know, man. This has been excellent, man. Do you have any other kind of big ideas related to like the kind of theme here was like Gen X, thinking out loud, podcasting. If you wanted to give a word to any of that kind of stuff.
Well, okay, if I get just a little controversial, but treat it gently. So, so there's no Jew, no Jew nor Greek, right? So there's a Christian idea inherently in breaking down ethnocentrism, right, and being united in Christ, right? That is important. One of the things that we're going to confront, though, is that part of the Great Commission is a calling out to go and baptize the ethnos. Father Stephen DeYoung talks about how those in a rabbinical or in like a Pharisaical, even rabbinic Judaism, denying Jesus is the Messiah tradition, right? What they can do and did do is they went, okay, Jesus was the Messiah, and that's not an abolishment of our Pharisaic traditions. It's actually a fully filling of them. Keep the Torah, get circumcised, whatever, because this is part of your ethnos, your people. But then orient these things towards Christ. The Gentiles don't need to do your ethnic practices. This is why they don't need to get circumcised, and it can still be good for you and your folks to get circumcised. That's the dichotomy paid in Galatians, right? So here we are, and I spent a lot of my leftist days, really encouraging minority groups and to represent their values. Here's this Hispanic community, here's the Black community, here's this community, here's that community, anybody that was possibly disenfranchised, right? And but no one would dare, like, oh yeah, it's good to have pride in your Black community and your identity and all this, right? But if you use any of that same language for waspy folks, right, then we collectively, as the West, in our German guilt pride, will come down on you. One of the interesting things as entering into the Orthodox Church is there is a struggle with ethnocentrism that takes form, right? So sometimes there's like a Greek church, and they identify a little bit more as Greek than Christian sometimes. It happens, right? This happens with the Romanians, with the Russians. This thing happens, right? It happens to people because you if you have generations in the church and you're developing as a people, right? Then and maybe you get a little bit more secularized or lose the word, let's say, right? Then you might tie together, but it's okay, because eventually, if you are rebellious as a people, you'll face some consequences and have to metanoia, return and repent to Christ. Okay, so one of the things that we're going to have to grapple with here, right? And this is going to come up. This is why the language of fascist and Nazi for Trump and his supporters and these garbage people come up, because now all of a sudden the inheritance that the Latin West, resulting in WASPs, resulting in American global empire, which is and the majority white folks are having to go, man, we're not even sure how to talk about our identity, because we're just busy self-deprecating for our cisness and our privilege. So now all of a sudden those chains are being broken off by encouragement from the largest Western power in the incoming administration. That's going to freak a lot of people out, right? But and that's the inherent danger. And I think Peterson has been anticipating this, and it's been part of his message for a long time, because there could be a wider right swing reaction to the left that could result in the kind of Germany problem 100 years ago. But that's not really how it looks, right?
Well, even from the coalition, when you have two boomers with RFK and Donald Trump from, basically legacy empire names in America. And then you have, I think Tulsi's probably pushing, she's Gen X, but she's Polynesian. And Vivek, this other player who's Indian. And then JD Vance is another white dude, like straight up English. That is liberalism. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. What I see is like a liberal wet dream of stuff. Yeah,
I got to jump in. Totally echoing that, Chris. So, again, no Trump fan here. A good friend of mine, very liberal in terms of like affiliations, Episcopal. Not a Trump fan politically, and I'm just going to use their response was, "This is democracy. This outcome is democracy. So if you like democracy, you need to at least have pause.
Yeah,
you need to have some humility and stop demonizing." And start recognizing, okay, I ought to at least have some pause if a coalition that diverse is all of a sudden, like, the one thing they are not, manifestly they are not, is they're not dumb people. So I think a better response for those of us who are not Trump fans would be for us to have some humility and step back and say, I think there's some things I have fundamentally not understood. So, Michael, I love I'm sorry, I've been off and on here, but kind of, you've sort of described a little bit of a blue pill, red pill transformation in your own thinking. And I respect that. I think we need to be curious and we need to be learners. Like, how about that? How about that for a stance? Like, I'm tired of the easy signaling and the easy dismissal and categorization of the other, and just how about if we don't like this outcome, or even if we just don't know what to do with it, why don't we just become students of it for a hot minute? I don't know. That's like, it's not a very deep point, but that's kind of my big takeaway.
Well, I've landed on the Christ pill, right? And I certainly dove deep into the red pill because I wanted to understand the alt-right. I remembered when the Ron Paul libertarians were in the tent with us in Occupy, and I needed to understand how it became so divided. Right? That's what got me going. And I remember there was some transphobe professor, the Canadian professor that spoke on Rogan. I better go listen to that guy first. That's probably a good place to start, right? And that really put me down quite a path. But that path lands, I think, on Richard Rollin, right? And the profession of the tradition of a hierarchy of understanding races. And it kind of is a marathon thing, right? And a running. And the highest hierarchy of race identification is the Christian race, and the diligence that we must have there first, while also acknowledging these other lower levels on the hierarchy of identification. Because my highest identity must be in Christ in order to redeem the rest. I am English. I am American. I am all these other things. Right, but the only thing that can hold that together and not turn it into ethnocentric warring is in Christ. That's the only redemption that there's ever been. It's the only peace that there's ever been. So here I am, and I go, yeah, I'm an Orthodox Christian, right? I'm in Christ, and I'm a Petersonian, and I appreciate the Republican Party now because they seem to be a little bit more. It's kind of like the Orthodox Christians in Syria who appreciated Assad, who has many problems and is far more dictatorial, but he kept a secular kind of peace that made it easy for the church to thrive, right? Versus communist leanings in Canada where they're burning down churches.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, man. That was excellent. And I've heard Grimm talk about on a little bit more of the secular level, like the race, and you took that to the next level spiritually, and that is, which was what you started with, the no Jew, no Greek, nor Gentile. And you know, it is, you know, it's interesting that JD Vance became a Catholic 5 years ago and he married an Indian person. Like, and I'm not like gonna just like, you know, pluralism, yay, but like, I mean, you have to contend with that too. Like, those things have to be, they're real. They're real.
They are, because they're expressions of what used to pass as liberalism.
And so that's the gaslight, Bryce, that I want to, if you want to call it the red pill, is that the gaslight is to say, to not look at these real things and call it something else, and like just keep turning up that temperature and be like, wait, this looks like liberalism, and you're like, no, it's fascism. You're crazy. It's, you know, and it's like that. I think is the thing that if Trump is really an 80s liberal, like to some degree, it's like he can't be that, but you know, in a way he could be, you know, with all that could happen. But I'm like,
I don't know what he is, but whatever he is, I guarantee you he's not what he's presenting himself to be. And I'll just tell you, I saw a picture today. There's a quote from People magazine, Trump saying, I could say whatever I want to on Fox News. This is like 1998. I can say whatever I want to on Fox News, and the Republicans will believe me because they're all idiots. That's who we're dealing with. Like, he's cynical, and so like it's not that big of a deal that he's elected. He's not going to overturn democracy, but I guarantee you what he definitely is not. He is no friend of Christians, and he is no friend of actual institutions of either republicanism or democracy. He's just a golf dude who wants to build a big ego complex throughout the world as much as he can, and that's fine. Like, that's totally fine. Yeah. But he's not like, yeah. So there is that side of Trump, and on the other side, and this is the dialectical pushback on that. It's he has geniusly figured out how to tap into and give voice to some of the frustrations that so many of us have felt, and that the Bushes didn't. Reagan and the Bushes did not. So
part of me wonders if he actually believes it, because
I don't know.
Because I mean, I think that I look around and I go to a Walmart, and Walmart doesn't. I'm talking about this thing about self-respect. Like, and we can talk about MAGA. What is, you know, oh, he wants to take us back to the regressive 50s. And it's like, is there a certain level though of like societal decorum that when he's saying that, if you're going to put the fringe at the top of the hierarchy on the left and say, this is what virtue is. And that's a, you know, a person with mental health, or that's a person with like all sorts of things, this, you know, of destitute. This is what virtue is. Instead of certain things, like when I go to Walmart and I'm just like, does anyone care about how they're presented when they, you know, they're all in pajamas in the middle of the day? Like, there's just something about that culturally that I think that he might be able to see. You know, like, wasn't San Francisco like this bastion of Western? You know, when I went to San Francisco in the 90s as a 10-year-old, and I walked, you know, went to Chinatown, and it's this cool thing. Like, I don't think I could even have that experience now. Like, you know, and so I think there's also a genuine piece of him and his American identity that wants America to have a little bit of self-respect and wear a damn suit. Like, and I'm not, you know, like, I think there's a piece of that in operation. And that has to do with like Talodic hierarchy in a way.
So Bryce, I had some thoughts on some of that, if you don't mind. One of the things that I heard Trump described as, again, I'm coming from a position where I had visceral hatred for Trump, right? He's an honest liar. Okay. Now,
sorry, boss. I'll watch the recording of what you say, but I got to go take
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah, I'll go on both. So
Okay.
maybe somebody else will find some
Yeah,
of
exactly.
this useful as well. But he's an honest liar. It's like, okay, well, what the heck does that mean? Right. No one thinks that politicians don't lie. No one thinks that, right? Some do it in a lot of projected authenticity in this prophylatic kind of way, right? And so it sounds really good. We hear Obama talk and reassure us about something, and it lands on our ears nicely and it eases our nerves. But even during the Occupy days, like, we weren't happy with Obama, right? We were talking about the drone strikes going on, the bailouts to the banks, like all this corporatocracy bullshit and lies and terrible things are going on. We weren't happy with him either, right? So I think the most vicious leaders are the ones who make the lies sound really nice. But the ones who have a certain kind of candor to them that frankly don't even have the kind of suave to pass a lie, yeah, then that feels weirdly trustworthy in a way that the other doesn't. So there's something to that. And then, is Trump a friend of Christians? So again, I guess my barometer for this is, I know I wasn't a friend of the Christians. I know that. And I know that, like, the one thing you wouldn't find in those leftist circles, largely speaking, this doesn't totally work, but largely speaking, is a Christian. We definitely hated the evangelicals, especially. We had some friendliness with, like, Quakers friends groups in Philadelphia. So they loved anarchists, right? And so there was some and you'll see this today. In fact, if you go to Philadelphia and you go to one of their friends' house that you can view and like go through their old friend's house and adult stuff, there will be anarchists, like leftist anarchists, who are working the front desk, right? They have some bonds there. And it makes sense when you get into the background of theology from the Quakers, right? Because that's what they came from. They came from the same roots. So is Trump friendly to evangelicals? Yeah, he's not going to be closing church doors anytime soon anywhere. Have the Catholics found him? Now, do they look at him as a holy person? No. But heck, I would point you to Constantine, who people struggle with today. In a large part of the Orthodox Church, it's like, here's Constantine and his mother Helen, equal to the apostles. But then you talk to some Orthodox Christians and they're like, I don't know, man. I don't even know if that guy was a Christian, right? It's controversial even today. Whatever we think about Trump, Constantine killed thousands and thousands of people. Was Constantine friendly to Christians? It's a large like whatever tradition you come from, you're impacted by the peace that he created for the Christians afterwards. It's complicated, right? So again, my barometer, do I think under Trump leadership that, and Trump-like leadership, MAGA, like people like my dad, do I think that there's going to be a burning down of churches? No. I think maybe like 100 years ago, you could say they maybe weren't friendly to Catholics, but they're even cool with that, because the Catholics, if any of them know about the Orthodox, they don't. The Catholics and the Protestants have an alliance, at least, that goes, well, we know what boys and girls are. So at least for the short term here, that aligns us. We're on the same page about an approximate reality. These folks are on a different reality. How long does that kind of coalition hold together? I don't know. 20, 30 years, 100 years? I don't know. But to me, I see Trump and that larger circle that he's surrounded with. I see a lot of Christians. In fact, a lot of people who have only recently been willing to call themselves Christians in the last 6 years.
Yeah. And I mean, again, this stuff gets ridiculed because I'm just going to point to these moments in history within, talk about sound bites and all these things. Was like, I stayed up all night and watched some intense protests in DC. The ones, I guess they were part of the George Floyd stuff, at the White House. And there was a church that was lit on fire. And then the next morning, Trump came out and he held up a Bible. Like, I do not hear me say Trump's a Christian. Trump said this. I'm just like answering the question of what does it mean to be a friend? Like to use the more progressive language, ally in this time, like he didn't get out there and hold up something else, or he capitalized on it politically so
there's concentric circles, right?
Yeah.
So Peugeot paints this picture too, right? And there's those who fall into the innermost circle, right? You can think of, here is the altar on the tabernacle, in the temple, on the hill, in the city, right? And so holy things are for the holy, and they're in the most inner part of the place that is holy. And then, in fact, even those that are in communion within the Orthodox Church, right? There's the inside of this bread that's cut out, right? And then that's what those who are in communion together share. But then the rest of the bread is shared with anybody that's visiting at all, right? Signifying like, yeah, we're all part of one loaf, right? But there is an inner part that has communion together. There is an inside and an outside. We understand that Trump is not on the innermost, right? It is not hard to point out his sins. In fact, it's really easy to, especially because I'm the chief of sinners.
I'd also say that, the thing that went through my mind was just how similar our government buildings are to old, like, cathedrals and churches and like the icons and all that stuff. It's like, it'd be like the separation of church and state, and we say, well, how come we can't build these cathedrals? Like, we still do. Just look at every state capitol building, like, so there is this relationship to that space, and we've pretended for a long time that it's not spiritual. So and I think that's another piece of everything that we're moving into, and with a lot of conversations, that we hear in these spaces. And so, which is not to say, like, I guess that's the part of me. It's like, there's a temptation that if you voted for somebody, that you have to stake your identity on them as well. Like, if I can't not say Trump's a Christian, because then if I say I voted for him, then I'm saying, like, then I'm not a Christian or something. I voted for the Christian candidate. Like, there is a generational, I don't know if you've ever encountered that, but like, kind of like, I have to justify this by saying he is me or something. And I just don't feel that pressure. I don't feel like I've ever had to celebrate his character.
There's a Puritan impulse to do that, right? Like, even what we just heard Bryce talk about. I get it, man. I get it, right? Like, he doesn't fit this mold, right? We don't see the fruits in his actions, and so we go, well, I'm not that. Well, look, I agree, but talk to Soviet Orthodox, like talk to Russian Orthodox Christians dealing with the Soviets versus Putin. We can point out Putin's faults all day. It's not hard to see them. Is that preferable to the Soviet Empire? Yes, resoundingly. It's very preferable, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's how they feel. They're not going to stop feeling that way. Do Syrians, even to today, do they feel like Assad and his dictatorness was that preferable to the chaos they're experiencing today? Yes, resoundingly they do. And so it's a redeeming of the good, right? It's finding honey from the flower. It's not all there. It's not all good. And we as Christians will candidly, with grace, say the things that are not good. Here's what sin is, and will redeem the good. We have to do both: all truth, all grace.
Man, somewhere in there's love, I think, right?
Yeah.
Like, and man, I appreciate you like hanging with me, and you've brought so many deep insights to the history and to political theory and philosophy, and it's an interesting story. I think I've heard you unpack it in on some other spaces and stuff, but maybe we'll unpack it together someday. I'd like to get you in here talking with Matthew Parlato sometimes. He's a big fan of a lot of the stuff that you brought in, and so maybe we'll make something like that happen. But I'm gonna close us down today. And Mike, thanks for hanging.
Thank you.
Yeah, dude. So everybody, 3-hour conversations change the world. We're only at 2 hours and 15 minutes on this stream, so we didn't quite get there. But yeah, maybe this one changed something for good. I enjoyed everybody that came on the stream. I enjoyed the back and forth, the ability to keep going. And so we will end on this. And yeah, everybody have a great day, and we will see you next time. I'm gonna get us some we're just gonna get some music going, I think. Hi, this is Christian Baxter, and you're listening to Yours Truly, a place we go to think out loud.